Shade was always a thorn in my flesh. Right from the very first day we set eyes on each other, we both knew that our spirits would have a tough time together. She was fierce, bold, confident, quarrelsome, contentious and troublesome. To put in short, she was stupid. I might be blunt, but that's the only way my heart deems fit to define her. I would tell you why. She was fierce for flimsy reasons. For example, she could decide to fight someone for knocking on the room door while she was asleep, even if she gave no notice about her sleep schedule. She could argue from dusk to dawn, just because she never wanted to be termed wrong. In addition, she loved showing off wherever she went to. Apart from all these, I had a little liking for her. I mean, I had to because she was my roommate and we were literally stuck together for a while. Contrary to her traits, I was a quiet and observant girl, barely talked except when I'm spoken to. I had a charm that called for attention, even without saying a word, unlike Shade, who would use her last strength to show everyone she was in the building. Life was going well for us in the school hostel, right until the day I introduced her to my boyfriend, Kachi. This happened because of how much she bugged and tormented me to introduce him to her. Honestly, I was against this, but after speaking to my boyfriend, he assured me that there was nothing huge in a mere introduction. "Are you sure you really want Mercy as your girlfriend?" she had asked Kachi amidst a loud laughter. The scene looked normal, apart from the fact I knew that things were barely normal with her. "Of course, I will choose her over and over again," Kachi said, not willing to be carried away by her bad energy. I smiled in my heart as I looked at her crestfallen face, which she tried to conceal with a smile. Shade didn't have a boyfriend. No guy seemed to have the capability of keeping up with her outrageous attitude. It wasn't surprising that none of her relationships lasted for up to 3 months. Which man would want to stay up all night in an argument? After the introduction, she never stopped asking about Kachi, and on days when I refused to talk about him, we would have a fight. "You are secretive and deceptive. We share the same room but you keep hiding things from me," she growled in rage and turned her back on me. I hated confiding in her. No doubt, she was the worst person to pass as a confidant because you would hear the details of your story outside in barely 24 hours. "I don't have anything to tell you, Shade. Just like I said, Kachi is fine," I would bluntly reply and focus my gaze on my book. The tension in the air would linger for a while, after which she would mumble some inaudible words before retiring to bed. It went on that way, but as time went on, things turned quiet. She stopped asking me about him and life went on, or so I thought. The day after she borrowed my phone to take pictures for hours marked a big change in my relationship. Kachi stopped calling after that day, and the very first person my suspicion was directed to was Shade. "Is Kachi still calling?" She asked the next day after Kachi broke up with me. It was a painful phase, and seeing how I didn't even get a chance to meet him before the breakup was excruciating. But then, Shade's sudden question triggered my suspicions. I couldn't do anything though, because there was no proof. "Yes, why?" I had lied, stuttering and searching through her eyes for answers. Everything about her was suspicious, and the way she was eager to know if he called me was something. "Nothing. I just thought that he wouldn't be calling again by now," she replied. "By now." That was the end of the conversation. Each time I tried to ask her why she thought Kachi would stop calling me, she would shove it aside or pick an excuse. One day, I overheard her conversation with another friend of hers. I was just outside the door, about to enter. I'm her roommate and I can say that they are not on talking terms. "You know how secretive she is. She is only trying to cover up." "You sound so sure," the other girl replied curiously. "I told that Kachi of a guy something that must have prompted him to end things. I took his number from her phone, called him and met with him, and then, we discussed many things about her," she had said. My heart dropped that instant. I felt my bones melting away as I held onto the wall to stop my legs from shaking. My lips quivered and my eyes turned blurry with tears. Kachi was a man I loved with all my heart. We were on our way to forever before he suddenly switched up on me. And here I was, listening to a conversation that was coming directly from the devil's lips. Shade was responsible, but she hid it all these while. What did you just say? I finally asked as I walked into the room, blowing out hot air and trying to calm my raging soul. Oh, about. She feigned ignorance and wore that Delilah kind of smile. That was when I lost it. I rushed over to her, screaming aloud as though I was inside the rings. I grabbed her neck and slapped her so hard on her cheeks. The other girl didn't really make any effort to separate us. Apparently, she was fed up with Shade as well, but was only waiting for the savior to come up. Crazily, I was that savior. I dug my nails into her neck, kicked her on her stomach and watched how she screamed and fell to the ground. What did you tell him? That was a very important question. If I wanted to fix things, I needed to know what it was I was fixing. What did you tell him? I asked again. She wore that devilish smirk, groaning in pain, but still, smiling in delight. I won't tell you. She dropped and started laughing. I was scolded by the hostel management, after which I signed a form that stated that I would be expelled if a fight happens again. I was lost at this point, as all efforts to meet Kachi turned out to be futile. The worst was that I still stayed in the same room with the devil responsible for my pain. My attention span in class and willingness to take my study seriously started declining, and it didn't take long before I became a shadow of myself. All I wanted was simple: to know what she said to him and to figure out how to make things right with him. After a while, I realized that taking the violent route in the matter was not the best. And so, I made up my mind to have a heart-to-heart discussion with Shade. I'm losing myself and you know it. You know how much I love Kachi. Can you please tell me what you said to him? I asked her, with tears dropping out of my eyes. She looked at me softly, after which she took my hands and caressed it. Forget Kachi. He is not meant for you, she said, and patted my cheeks. I felt a pump of adrenaline in my veins, and that instant, I felt the urge to grab her neck and strangle her to death. But then, the letter I signed flushed past my memory, and without having any other thoughts, I shoved those wild plans in my head aside. Shade went on with her life, pretending as though she was not the major factor responsible for my pain. I fell in love with alcohol, and a day will not pass without getting myself drunk and wasted. Most times, I would be asleep during class hours, just because I still suffered a hangover. Shade did nothing about this apart from informing the other girls in the hostel that her roommate was now an alcoholic. Shade started doing things loudly. She would talk excessively on calls and laugh hysterically, indirectly feeding on my pain and telling me that there was nothing I could do to make her tell me what she told Kachi. One Sunday, I finally decided to attend a church service after rejecting countless invitations by a course mate. The church was about 1 hour away from the school, and I jumped on it because I wanted a long road trip. During the service, I caught sight of someone who was clearly spirit-filled. On a closer look, I realized that it was Kachi. My heart skipped a beat and my heart raced in excitement and anxiety. I was glad that I finally saw him after some months. The feeling was surreal. Immediately after the service, I walked up to him and tapped his shoulders. "Hi," I mumbled awkwardly. He was taken aback for a second, but recovered almost immediately. "Mercy," he called out, obviously not so pleased to see me. "What happened? You suddenly switched on me." I kept wondering what happened until I realized my roommate told you something. I folded my hands to my chest and glared at him. He cleared his throat and took in a deep breath. "You are going to be disrespectful," and I figured that out after talking to Shade. He dropped, and for a minute, I thought I had just heard wrongly. Disrespectful. But we've dated for close to 2 years. Why would you make such a conclusion after a conversation with Shade? I asked again, searching through his eyes as though the answer laid there. "Nothing," he replied and walked away. I went back to the hostel and waited for Shade's return. "I saw Kachi today," I started the moment she walked into the room. She was stunned but only laughed and nodded. "That's great. You told him I am disrespectful." I asked, breathing heavily, with my fists clenched in rage. "Not that exactly, something different. But forget about all that because Kachi is not the guy for you," Shade replied as she took off her shirt and sat on her bed. "Don't look at me like I'm the devil. I only told him the truth." She dropped, And what is the truth? I asked immediately, almost at the verge of losing my patience. That you are over-ambitious and focused, with high standards and very career-minded, she explained. Trust me, I meant no harm. I only wanted him to know the type of person you are and to let him know that you are very valuable, she added almost immediately. He left after that information, and that explains that he wasn't meant for you, she said in finality. I could feel my head spinning at this point just as I replayed Kachi's words and compared them to that of Shade. Kachi had said that I was going to be disrespectful and putting the pieces together. I realized that it was making some sense now. Who sent you to tell him that? What was your business with my relationship? Why won't you focus on your life and leave mine alone? I screamed out of my lungs as tears poured out of my eyes. Despite the tears, I felt the rush of sincerity in my veins. Shade was right. I was a very ambitious young woman who held career with all her might. I hid that part of me from Kachi because I loved him and wanted to ascertain what his reaction to that would be. I wanted to be a politician someday, to be at the top and among the well-known ladies in the country, but that didn't mean that I would be disrespectful, did it? The next Sunday, I went to that same church, but this time, I wanted closure with Kachi. She told you I am over-ambitious and focused and that made you to turn your back on me. I asked him. She said you wanted to be a politician. I can't deal with that. I hate over-ambitious ladies. It's irritating and disgusting, he declared. So, I'm disgusting because I wish to be a politician. I inquired. Yes, you are. He said. I landed a firm slap on his cheeks and added one more to it. You are the disgusting one. And yes, you don't deserve me. I screamed and walked away from the scene. I couldn't believe that I called Shade the devil all these while when Kachi was the one. I sat in front of my mirror that night just as Shade slept and I couldn't help but blame myself. The minute Kachi ended things with me without saying a word was when I was meant to forget that he ever existed. Shade was just being her normal wide-mouthed self, but she did me a favor by exposing the true person Kachi was. I picked up my pieces in no time and went on with my life, knowing that Kachi never deserved me, and in no time, I would find the right person, someone who won't term me as disrespectful, just because I want to pursue my career in politics. And as for Shade, our spirits never made peace. We only had to live and persevere as roommates until we graduated.